So good morning, everyone. We know that some of you were in super good time. We've been very excited. We're like, oh my God, there's people coming in already, 5-2. And we're going to start this webinar by giving everyone a chance to just like log in to the webinar. And as we do, I would love to hear, we always start our webinars with a very basic questions. Where are you sitting today? Where are you watching from? Because even if we're connecting digitally, it's always super fun to know where everyone are. I think all three of us are in Stockholm today. However, in 3 different locations in Stockholm, so we're a bit geographically spread anyway, but it would be super nice to hear from you as well. And if you have already now questions that you haven't already sent to us, you are super welcome to start putting them in the chat or in the questions tab. I will ask a couple times throughout the webinar for you guys to enter your questions, but otherwise feel free to start already now. We're super excited to see what's up in your heads today. And now it's been a good minute, so I'm going to start. And welcome to today's webinar. Ask us anything about CSRD, Omnibus, and what's next. The last part I realize now is quite broad. What's next can be quite questions about everything. My name's Clara Edwards. I work at SustainLab with sustainability questions and with partnerships. And today I have brought with me 2 colleagues, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So Maria, who are you?
Hi everyone, good morning, great to have you here. My name is Maria Svantemark. I'm CEO and co-founder of SustainLab. I have a background in sustainability science, and then I worked as sustainability manager, which I know many of you do that listen in. So before founding this company, doing that or having that role, I used those experience to then found SustainLab. So that's my background and myself.
Super nice. And we also have our customer success manager, Sophia, with us today. And I'm also going to let her talk for herself. Sophia, tell us a bit about you.
Thank you. Yes, hi everyone, I'm Sophia. And as Clara said, I'm a customer success manager here at SustainLab. So I work very close with a lot of our customers, helping them with climate calculations and preparations for CSRD and just everything that has to do with our platform. And I have a background as a sustainability consultant and also as a climate and sustainability coordinator. So I've been on the other side before collecting all the data. So it's fun having those contrasts now doing more of the calculations for our customers.
I think amongst the 3 of us, we have quite a broad understanding of sustainability and the variety of topics that falls under that umbrella, and very different perspectives on our backgrounds, but we all have ended up in the same company and working towards the same goal. And we're super excited to share from that. And I hope that diversity in our backgrounds will be giving some nuance into our answers today. But what is today? So part of today's webinar is this Ask Us Anything. But before we jump into all of those questions and everything from our answers, we're also going to look into a survey that SustainLab has just done. Because post-Omnibus, we realized that we heard a lot of things from the market and from our customers and from people in the same sustainability sphere as us. But it was quite hard to get the red thread throughout everything. And as you might have heard SustainLab say once or twice before, if you've met us before, we like things not to be in theory, but through data. So we conducted our own survey, and I'm going to go through the results from that survey today. And I'm also going to make some parallels to other reports and voices that have been through the past year connected to CSRD. And we also know that a lot of the people in our audience today are experts and colleagues in sustainability and also change makers in your own companies. So we're super happy that you're here. And if you would like to contribute to the discussion or to our answers or have another perspective, please feel free to interact in the chat. We're very happy for for other perspective and diversity, because I think that's something that sustainability really needs always. So please don't be shy for that. And as we go into the questions part of this webinar, you have two options. You can either write in the chat for just general reflections or comments, but you can also write your questions there. If you don't want anyone else to see your questions, you can use the questions functionality, and then it's just going to be me and Maria and Sophia who can see those questions. But as we get through the survey, please put questions in as you come up with them. Other than that, I think we're going to begin. The presentation and a summary of the survey will be sent out to everyone post this webinar, and also our contact information if there's anything that's unclear, if you want to contact us after. And also the recording will be available to everyone. So, great. And usually we start talking a little bit about who SustainLab are. Who are we? And usually I let Maria, who founded the company, talk about this, but today I'm going to steal the spotlight a little bit more. As before we really dive into the survey and to the questions, we want to just tell you guys a little bit about us. So SustainLab was founded in 2020, way before CSRD and way before Omnibus, because Maria, who's here today, and Kamal, her co-founder, had a very clear vision to make sustainability measurable and manageable for companies. Maria, in her previous role, saw a clear challenge that a lot of time and resources for her and other sustainability managers went to chasing data rather than actually using the data to make better decisions and drive change. And I think one summarizing trait of every SustainLab employee is really the driving change mentality. We want to make the planet better. So the solution that they came up with was our sustainability platform, which supports companies in effective data collection, calculations with the help of Sophia, and reporting towards, for example, CSRD. And if you're curious about hearing more about SustainLab, we're super happy to, of course, share that with you in another meeting. But now we're going to go into our agenda and start with looking at the survey. So as I've already told you, we did this survey because we wanted to have more data and understand the needs of sustainability leaders. So the target audience was sustainability leaders and decision makers around this. And the purpose was really to understand what happened post 26th of February 2025, what happened post-Omnibus inside different companies. And also to help us as a company and our partners to understand what support is needed for these companies moving forward. And I want to start with this slide here, because we need to know who did we hear from. We had about 50 respondents, and as you can see, our survey really covered companies from all different sizes. This is a very very evenly spread out graph. We covered companies from less than 100 employees to more than 1,000. So quite a broad spread. There was not really a clear dominance in companies reacting to this survey. But what does this diversity tell us? Well, I think it tells us that regulatory uncertainty and shifting sustainability expectations doesn't discriminate. But what it does change is how you experience this uncertainty. So that depends a lot on your size. So as we go through the coming slides, I want you to think about that. Like what size of company am I in? Where do I fit in? What are the similarities with other companies in this survey? Because what we've really seen is the company size is, of course, influencing variations in paths forward. And it's quite quickly clear that company size is shaping this experience. But what is also clear is that regardless of size, companies are feeling pressure on who will report on what, but also what questions still remain. So that's, I think, is a good insight to have. And moving on, we actually asked the first question about what happened before Omnibus. So how prepared did these respondents feel prior to Omnibus? Well, we saw that about 6% only said that they were fully ready to take on CSRD, but most of the other companies rated themselves somewhere in the middle, doing some of the work, but far from finished. And a good number of, especially the small-sized business, were only just beginning. And this really tracks against other reports. PwC did a report 2024 where only 4% of companies said they were ready to report. So that's a strong reality check that even those in wave 2 and 3, who we thought were going to report for this year's data, are still figuring out quite a lot of things, still figuring out basic data readiness, materiality, and internal roles. So even post-Omnibus, not everyone was fully ready for CSRD. And quite naturally here, we could see that the larger companies had come quite a lot further than the other companies because they already had a clearer reporting roadmap. But in the mid-sized cohort, which is quite a big chunk of companies, it's quite the two different camps. Some are leading and some are quite stuck at the starting line already. And I think one quote that stood out to me, because we asked for some qualitative data as well, was one respondent said that they were halfway across the bridge and now they don't even know if they're supposed to keep on walking, which is quite, I think, a visual quote, like standing in the middle of the bridge, not knowing which way to go back. But I think what we really want to highlight is it's not really about where the finish line is. Being prepared for CSRD is never going to be crossing a line and you're going to be done, but it's about building capacity so that you're ready when regulations change and when you have changes in your reality. And what happened then after Omnibus, you might ask? Well, as you can see here, or what actually stands out quite clear to me is the big chunk of green that comes out that over, or no, was I too fast here? There we go. I have two different slides. Sorry, now this is me being technically inept. But yeah, the budget question is what I wanted to talk about. Here is really clear about the green, that looking at the sustainability budget. A lot of companies don't have one. You also see that there's some decreased budget and some that stay the same, but I think the lack of blue, the lack of having an increased budget is perhaps not surprising, but I think it stands out quite well. And I think more than half of the companies that's saying that they don't have a dedicated sustainability budget really says something. And this really sharply contrasts with the rest of the things going on in the world. If you look at investors, the European Investment Bank has reported that climate-related investments are growing. So whilst that is happening on one end, companies are pulling back on climate investments. And I think our take on this has really been that this is not a sign of disinterest, it's a sign of hesitation. And what we can see post-Omnibus is that it really introduced some sort of pause, and some companies took that pause quite literally, and some companies have taken it as a continued momentum. But while it may be quite low-hanging fruit, and it might seem like nice to be cautious and hold on to your budget, I think it is worthwhile thinking about how inaction can be just as risky as overspending. So be smart about this as well. And going forward to this part, we also asked about the timeline for sustainability reporting. And of course, here it's quite clear a match towards the company size that I showed you just before. Looking at the timeline for sustainability reporting, we have some that are delaying, some that are hitting pause entirely, some that will continue. But I think what the nuance here is that connected to the comments that the companies made, that it's not just reacting to regulation change and stop the clock and the fact that the regulation is pushed forward. It's more the internal uncertainty that they don't know what they're aiming for anymore. So they don't know where to go, and thus the plan timeline is changing. And in terms of scope, we also saw some clear trends that a lot of companies chose some path of reduction, some sort of reduction in their scope, either to the legal minimum, either to what's business critical, or to just focusing on, for example, climate data. And what we saw here in terms of company size is that the mid-sized companies are the most likely to scale back. And of course, this is possibly quite likely due to capacity limits or about the aforementioned confusion. But I do think that this shift has quite a lot of consequences, and I think cutting back on too much data can create trust gaps, and it also leads to a potential risk in not being able to answer ad hoc data requests. So it might feel safer to do less because then you spend less time on this, but it also can create more work in the future. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the Q&A because we've gotten some questions around this. But in terms of what is material data can be both connected to, of course, the DMA and what is expected of you legally, but what's material data to your organization can also be the questions you get from your customers, from investors, and from banks. So also remember that when you discuss increasing or decreasing your scope of planned reporting. And last but not least, we also asked about the infamous DSME standard that was published in December 2024, and not really anyone even, I think, opened that standard until post-Omnibus, where it really got an upswing. And I think about 40% are still evaluating the options and not really sure what to make of it. And of course, here is really where the small companies showed a bit more interest, and some had said, "Oh, we're going to use it," but since it is quite a difference from CSRD looking into DSME, it's a voluntary standard, it's not a legal framework. It's just interesting for us to see what path is going forward. But I think one quote that I want to share with you that's not from this survey, that comes from one of our customers, is that the ESRS is really changing the narrative and this new language of sustainability. So if you're in this mid-sized cohort, not really knowing where to go, you're a bit in limbo, we want to recommend that using the DSME is one option, but also voluntary ESRS is one option to stay relevant, especially if you know that you might come into scope of CSRD in the future. And we have had another webinar on this standard. We have a lot of resources on the website, and we're super happy to help. We have this solution in our software already. So if this really speaks to you, please contact us as well. But in the last part, as I've mentioned, I have highlighted a few quotes as well. We didn't just ask about the plans. We also asked about how they're feeling about the long-term and short-term impact of the Omnibus regulation, and we really are mid-shift. And we got quite a lot of honest answers, and I think on the bridge simile, we also got this, which is where we're just getting our stride and then the floor shifted. This feels like future self problems, but we'll still be the ones dealing with them. Or if we delay this now, we'll just fall further behind when the pressure comes back. And it was quite a clear tone of frustration from especially the larger companies that were saying that we've been working for months aligning on a plan, and now we are reconsidering it. And I think my last quote that I wanted to highlight is this, that mid-sized companies reveal quite a broader range of sentiment. And one very clear quote is that without the legal requirements, it's harder to convince the board that this still matters. And this is something that we really can see in dialogues with customers, with new customers and potential customers, that having the leadership and management on board has really been a lot trickier, and it's a bigger uphill battle than it was pre-Omnibus. And I hope that this was interesting. We really enjoyed looking into these answers and doing this analysis. And as I said, this will all be sent out to you. And I hope there's some new questions after this as well. So now we're going to move into the Q&A part of this. Now we've looked what the story of the data told us, part concern, part momentum, and a whole lot of uncertainty still. So we're going to join into the Ask Me Anything part of today's sessions. And Maria and me will give our best shot at answering everything you have. And I started by saying that we have quite a broad range of knowledge, and I still believe that it's true. But if the case comes and you ask the questions that we don't know, we will be very transparent and let you know that we don't know, and also take the opportunity to use our network and get back to you. So on that note, I'm going to take a moment to look into the chat and the questions. But Maria, do you have any reflections from the survey? You've also been part of this project.
Yeah, it's I would say in many ways a result that we would expect. We experience the same when we talk to customers and prospects. It is a lot of uncertainty, it is a lot of challenges, and it is a lot of frustration. So that didn't surprise me. Of course, some answers did. For example, that more than 50% of the companies don't have a dedicated sustainability budget. That was the reality when I started as sustainability manager in 2015. But I for sure hoped that the world had moved on. But there's still a lot of work to do.
I think that's a very clear reflection. I think we weren't so surprised, but it was nice to see, I think, that what we thought, our hypotheses prior to the survey, were very much reflected in it. And we actually had some questions in the chat, and we also had some questions collected prior to the event through LinkedIn and email and from customers and partners. But the questions that I have now is, have you seen a surge of companies wanting to do VSME, or are these mid-sized companies still clueless? And I think I partly answered that from the survey, but perhaps Maria, you who also are out there meeting a lot of companies, want to reflect a bit on it.
Yeah, I think we actually have seen a very, very rapid shift, which has been quite interesting. Straight after Omnibus, a lot of companies said VSME is the way to go, and decided on that very, very quickly. And we were in a lot of discussion then with companies that wanted to do VSME and use our platform to report on that. And now the last month or so, I think this has shifted quite a lot. And I think this is also a sign of maturity and taking time and reflect on what is actually providing us business value and what do we do for reporting reasons. And doing things for reporting reasons is, of course, important if you have stakeholders that expects you to report, and the majority of you would have that, even if it's not from legislation. It could be from, banks or insurances or customers. I'm very sorry about this light. When the sun comes and goes outside of the window, the camera reacts to that. So sorry about that. But now we see more of, for VSME, VSME is a good option for some companies, mainly the smaller ones, under 250 employees. And we do have some customers that have chosen to go that path, and where we support them to do that reporting. But I think what we see now is that the companies that are a bit bigger, so between 250 and 1,000 employees, more go for what we call voluntary ESRS. So starting from your double materiality analysis, but pick and choose what data is actually most important to our business, and looking back into the core business values rather than this is the reporting frameworks and all the things we need to tick. So a bit of a shift, not as much VSME as we saw a couple of months ago, I would say.
Super. And I think, Sophia, you have actually have contact with the customers as well. Do you have any other reflection, or do you have any other thoughts? You after having looked into the standard?
Yeah, I think I agree with Maria. Like directly after Omnibus came, a lot of the smaller companies, they felt like all the work they did with the DMA and every preparation they did, they still wanted to do something. They still want to report something. So when they saw VSME, they felt like this is a good option, because now we can still showcase our work. So I think for the smaller companies, I agree that they are still focusing on that, which is great. I think that's a good starting point for the smaller companies. And I think they want to continue, and then they're going to start like outgrowing VSME as well. So I think that's my reflection. I don't meet a lot of prospects, a lot of other companies out there. So I think more about like what's the status out there. But for our companies, the smaller ones, yes, very popular.
I think it's tricky when everything is moving so fast in both the market but also in the regulations. And we actually had quite a good questions on this very topic from one of our customers, which is how should we best handle this uncertainty that Omnibus has brought? Is there, for example, a risk that the emissions trading schemes will be cancelled, or any other legislations that will follow the route of CSRD? And I'm thinking that I'm going to shoot this one to Maria.
Yeah. if we look at the Omnibus proposal from start, it's designed to streamline and simplify existing sustainability regulations, but not to dismantle them completely. That's kind of the narrative around Omnibus. But of course, one can discuss the process up to this point and whether or not this will actually streamline or simplify, because that's also one thing we see now, that whereas the ambition of Omnibus was to simplify a lot, as we said, a lot of insecurity has been brought to the companies. And now we're shifting back to, is it this standard we should report to? Is it that? Is it GRI still, or should I go for CSRD? So as of now, we have not seen a simplification out of the Omnibus proposal, at least, but perhaps that will come with more clarity. We'll see. But the core objective of the European Green Deal, which CSRD and ETS falls under, still remains in place. So the core objective of shifting the finances and the economic activity in Europe to a more sustainable one, that is still in place and will so be also going forward. So of course there's always a risk of shifting more legislations, but the direction of we're going to need to do more when it comes to sustainability than we have done before as companies, that still remains clear. So I also think there are some different ways of reacting to this, knowing that we might live in a more uncertain political landscape the coming months and the coming years. So looking at how can we handle this? How can we adapt as a company to be future-proof? If you take ETS or European trading schemes as an example, which basically, if we want to simplify it a lot, puts a price on carbon. Taking that into account, what does it mean if the price of carbon is 10, 100 or 1,000 kroners or euros or whatever? How would that affect our business? And looking at that type of scenario analysis, what will it mean if this goes in either direction? And then as soon as you see signals of where is this going, you already have a view of your options going forward. And for that, I think a bit back to the other question, whether VSME is now the evolving standard, and we see no, actually companies are more looking at what's core business data, what's core business information that we need. That should be part of it. So as long as you have your data in order, your information in order, you are way better prepared to tackle these shifts, whether it is a change in CSRD or whether it is a change in ETS. So ensuring that you have a strategy that allows for this flexibility is going to be super important going forward. And this is also something that would resonate with your leadership team, for those of you who might struggle with that, because this is also a kind of normal business strategy. What does it mean if we get higher taxes, or whether there is legislative changes and so on? How will that affect our business? It's the same here. So doing that scenario analysis from a baseline of having your data in order will really get you the best position, no matter what the changes, what changes might come.
I think that's a great answer. And I think if I could add to that, I would also say something along the lines that there will be more legislations that are very specific. I think CSRD is a very broad, all-encompassing transparency legislation, but there will be other sustainability legislations coming, and there are already coming, like the EU Deforestation Directive and the Energy Efficiency Directive, and also for specific companies working with batteries. There's lots being rolled out in different ways, also requiring a systematic approach. So I think when talking about handling the uncertainty, I really agree with Maria on taking it home and being sure that you know your own reality, so you can be proofed in this reality.
Actually, one comment on that, Clara, as you said, bring your knowledge home. I think that's also a shift we see quite a lot now with companies that has worked with consultants, for example, for their carbon calculations, and they have sent some data. The consultants have worked with it, and they get some data back, and that's the data they have to take decisions from. And they see now that that's not really going to be sufficient going forward, because we need to understand our own data better. We need to understand what emission factor has been used, what assumptions have been made, what extrapolations have been made, so that we can actually make even better decisions because we are more sure about our data. So taking the knowledge home, I think that's a good advice.
And another question, I think we got in two big questions about EU and legislation and the ESRSs, and I think we're just going to rip the second one off right away, which is what can we expect from the simplification of the ESRSs, and when can we expect it? And I'm thinking that I'm going to shoot this at Maria again before we jump into a bit more data-specific questions for Sophia.
Yeah, sure. So when we talk about what amendments are expected, we should remember that this is all still in negotiations, so we don't know. We just know from the discussion that has been held and the documents that have been published. So keep that in mind, that this answer comes from available information, and it's still up for debate and discussion, so probably will change part of it. But one of the expectations of how this will amend is that we're going to see a reduction in number of data points, especially the narrative data points. So that could also be a strategic choice to start focusing on the numerical data points, because they are likely not going to be reduced in the same amount. Also simplification of disclosures. So streamlining also how this will be presented, and the structure of the standards is another amendment that we can expect. Improved what they call interoperability and legal consistency, so aligning better with other legislations and standards. And I think that is really in favor for many companies, because many companies have a lot of different standards to report on, and a lot of different stakeholders that demand the data to be reported in different ways. So ensuring we align on that better is another expected outcome. And introducing some practical reliefs. So for example, for confidential data or acquired businesses, or allow for more estimations with low data quality and so on. Those are some of the changes that we expect to see. What we expect not to change is that the description of your method and all the metadata around how did you get to these calculations, we don't expect that to change. So kind of the control of what you report is likely not to change, but that the scope will be reduced in what we hope is a pragmatic way, but let's see. And when is this expected? Well, the process is ongoing now of the simplification from ESRS, and it's expected in October this year. And let's see if they make it. It's a lot of work, but the latest communicated timeline is October 2025, and then we can have a new webinar in October where we see whether we're there or not.
Thank you. And I think on the last point of the timeline, I am very skeptical that they will make it until October 2025. But I also think that it's important to know that there's a lot of moving parts on EU level regarding Omnibus at the moment. There's an investigation of the due diligence process up until the Omnibus proposal was presented that was started just last week. There's lots of things going on in EFRAG who are preparing the ESRSs, and there's lots happening in the political landscape. So not to add to the uncertainty fire, I do think it's important to be mindful and also find outlets of information that are trustworthy. So we try to summarize everything for our customers and for our network, and we try to stay on top of mind, but we also know that there's lots of good official sources, and we're super happy to refer you to those if you need help finding this information firsthand. And now I'm going to go to another question that we got, which I think is the most asked question ever. What is everyone else doing, and how are others acting right now? And of course, part of that answer we got from the survey, but that's just information that we got in data. But what we also know at SustainLab is that data without context is sometimes a bit tricky to understand. And who is better at giving context to data than our customer success manager, Sophia, who actually works with this day to day. So what do you see that our companies are doing right now? What's the biggest questions people are debating or fighting with? Please share your post-Omnibus reflections.
Yeah, no, I I agree with the survey though. I think it's a lot of our companies, our customers, they are not really slowing down. They are just rethinking how they should report, basically, because it's still important. They have done a lot of work and they want to showcase that. So kind of what I said in the beginning. So they are still working on like the core data. That's the important thing, right? You want to have the data that you can make changes with. But once they have started finding this data, they want to showcase that. The thing that's changing now with Omnibus is just that how do we do it? How do we showcase that? So I would say that they are most of our customers, they keep going. But they also, I think, as you say, the most common question is how are others acting right now? And I see when I talk to all my customers that they wonder this, they ask this. And when they hear that others keep going, they also want to keep going. So it's kind of that momentum right now, that staying on course, keep going, keep the focus, just because you don't want to fall behind. Because when you do get to that point when you are required to disclose your sustainability data, you want to be ready. Although now you maybe have more time to set the processes, you can get full overview of your sustainability data process in your company. So it's more taking the time to look into the data, set the process, and look at how you want to showcase what you do.
And I would also say that if you look at your competitors, I mean, first of all, when it's a legislation, it's not a competitive advantage to do something like, oh, we're abiding to the law. That's expected from you. So a lot of companies are also looking at what are our competitors doing, and in case they are, if they are moving forward, it leaves you with very little choice other than also moving forward. And I think that is I know when I was sustainability manager, I did a lot of competitor review. I looked at other companies' targets. I looked at their progression and used that as a benchmark. Okay, if we say that we want to be leading in sustainability, well, then we need to have targets that are more aggressive than our competitors. If we're fine with saying we don't want to be the best, but we don't want to fall behind, that says something about how you should set your targets and what course and is expected from you. So since a lot of companies are moving forward, that is also a signal that the market will continue to move.
That was the one thing I started thinking about. I'm like, wow, this is really a good competitive edge if you manage to stay on top. And a follow-up question, I think both of you can answer this. I'm going to ask it to you again, Sophia, because you talked a little bit about time and about processes. And one thing that we got asked prior to this was how to be this strategically, or how to do actually the strategic alignment with the new reporting timeline. So the just abiding with the law part is a bit pushed quite a bit, but we have all of these other expectations and stakeholders and forces prompting to data and sustainability work. So what would you say is the most common data to start with? So what data is actually worthwhile at the moment, and what other things would you do or recommend in terms of this timeline? Like what do you start with, and what direction would you scale? What's the journey, for example, for a company that now is in this limbo and wants to report data in 2 years? What should they start with?
they should start with whatever they can. No, but start from the very beginning, just the basic data that you can find. If we look at, I think one of the most common things that I start doing with customers is look into GHG data, because that is used for, it's not only CSRD that has been asking for this, it's like when you have investors or you have bank loans, you have other things, they want to see your progress, they want to see that you know your data. So that's a very good place to start. So what I usually do with customers is, your basic scope 1 and 2. And I say basic because that's the most common thing that we see companies do, but it's not that easy for everyone. So starting there and making sure that you have a good process for that is a very good starting point. And that's maybe for customers or companies who haven't really done this before. But if you have gotten a bit further, then you should start looking into your scope 3. And that takes a lot of time. So if you should have set aside time for this and be prepared for the work. But when you get the information out and you have the data, you can do a lot with it. So it's not just for CSRD or VSME, or it's for a lot of different standards that you want to report on. So I would say that's the starting point, and then start looking into your social data. Start with your own workforce. So understand what's important for you. And then when you have that basic understanding, then you can keep going. That would be my advice for everyone.
And a bit to build on that, what you do with those first parts is also that you build capacity. So when you start and you create a really, really solid process, it's easier to replicate that for other areas, and also have that in mind that, okay, you might have collected your scope 1, 2, and also 3 data, but biodiversity data is new for a lot of companies and so on. So you need to have a process that's replicable, and that you really create by doing that foundation.
Super. And I agree with both of you. And I think something to add to this question and then to build on the next, I've been looking into a lot of reports from investors and from financial institutions and try to understand, okay, so what is the data that a company needs to actually be front running and to have the green investments? And it's very much aligned with what Sofia is saying. It's climate data for your value chain, so being able to deliver that to your customers, and also future-looking data, having the ability to do climate risk scenarios and future-proof analysis, because that's really what the investors are looking for, both also in terms of risk in future, but also social sustainability and own workers data, equality data, etc. But just also on what loops to this, if you put those two things together, they are quite in sync. So if you are smart, you have both perspectives in early. You look at how do we build capacity, how do we set these processes, and how do we make this work, not just a really big pain in the ass, and how do we also gain value and look to the future. So I think there is quite a lot of ways to be smart about this. So super good, Sofia, to hear that this is also where a lot of companies are today. That bites well. But on that note, I wanted to take one of the questions that we got in on this capability regarding data quality, because that's also a question that we have gotten before. So how do you think companies should work with data quality management, just like validation processes, handling inconsistencies? How do you start with setting these workflows? What are do's and what are don'ts? And I think this is going to be our last question, but I think it is a really important one. And Sofia, you are also the expert in the field.
Yes, I would say when you work with data quality and you are setting your processes, documentation is key. So remember to document every assumption that you do, every method that you use for calculations, and what data you are using. it is completely fine to use proxies and assumptions and estimations. That's data quality isn't just about having the best, most granular, exact data. It could just be like, we understand our process, we understand that what we are using, we understand our calculations. So I would just be very strict about documenting everything that you do. Follow existing guidelines. For example, GHG protocol has a lot of guidelines for how you should calculate things and how you should document things. If you have an opportunity to use a system, that's also great. Then you have more control of how you do calculations, for example, and how you document it. So that would be my biggest tip for those starting. Yes.
Great. I think it's really like amongst the questions we get a lot is how does everyone else do it, and how do you do it better? It's a competitive edge already here. But Maria, I wanted to give you the opportunity if you have any final words to add to all of this.
I think it is clear to us and everyone we talk to that moving forward is the right thing to do, but you can of course amend your speed and scope, and ensure that you have your organization with you, because I think that's also where a lot of sustainability professionals struggle right now, that they have a vision and they see what needs to be done and they see how much work it is. But when we don't have the legal pressure, the leadership team and the board might not see the urgency and don't understand how much work it is around all of this. So ensure that you have also internal alignment and point to other needs of moving forward: competitors, customers, consumers, investors, insurance companies, what have you. That will help you to move on.
I think that was an excellent way to end this webinar. So we want to thank everyone who's been with us today. It's been super fun to prepare this webinar and look into the questions that were up beforehand, and also super nice to have some interaction here today. And thank you, Maria and Sophia, for being here today as well and sharing your insights and your broad knowledge. And to everyone who's still listening in, I realize now we're a bit over time, not too much. Please feel free to contact us if there's anything you wanted to continue discussing from today, or if there's any new questions that pop up after this. We are super happy to help, and either through SustainLab or guide you in the right direction to one of our partners. Yeah, so with that, thank you so much. And we're going to end the webinar.